Welcome to our Constitution event for today. We're in for a long day. There's going to be a lot of exciting speakers. My name is Robert Begley. I'm the president and founder of the New York Hero Society. And we will be hearing about heroes of the American Revolution all day long. So I'd like to start off with an invocation and ask you all to please rise and face the American flag over here. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Okay, you can be seated. So that begins the eloquent preamble to the U.S. Constitution. On September 17, 1787, the Founding Fathers signed the Constitution and challenged the political problem of the ages. They identified the proper relationship between the individual and the state. They created the first government in history that recognized the inalienable rights of its citizens. Now, the founders looked out at reality and they saw an individual, and another individual. And they recognized that the individual is a sovereign being who possesses rights, and that the government's purpose is to secure these rights. Now, prior to this, the individual's life was always the subordinate, whether to the king, to the church, to the tribe, to the group, to the collective. So what kind of government did the founders form? Well, let's go to the Constitution to get an answer to that. Article 4, Section 4 says, "The United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion." So this means America is a republic, which is Greek for the people, but it's backed up by a written constitution. Hence, our nation is a constitutional republic. Now, just to clarify, this term Republican has nothing to do with today's Republican or Democrat Party, since neither of them upholds the Constitution consistently. Now, during today's special celebration, we will hear many of the virtues of the Constitution. Some will pay homage to the Bill of Rights. But for my own opening, I'm going to stick to the actual original wording before it was changed. It's very bare, and it simply states what the government is permitted to do. In fact, Alexander Hamilton, my favorite founding father, he believed that once you started saying that the government cannot do A, B, and C, it leaves open the possibility of them doing X, Y, and Z. And unfortunately, today, the government can do A through Z. Now, at this point, you might be asking, what should the government do? What is its proper function? Only one thing: to protect the rights of its citizens. Which rights? Well, that's covered in the other brilliant founding document, the Declaration of Independence, which states the right to life, liberty, property was in the original draft, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, how can rights be violated? Only by force. Therefore, we need the police to protect us from criminals, we need the military to protect us from foreign aggressors, and we need objectively defined laws to settle disputes. So if we look back to the pivotal moments that led to the founding of America, we have the Boston Tea Party. More on that in words and music later on today. We have the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and we have the American Revolution. We know that George Washington led this ragtag army to defeat the greatest, most powerful nation in history. I remember when I was in like the 3rd or 4th grade, I had to do a book report on George Washington. His leadership, his calm demeanor, and his incredible presence were all inspiring to me. In fact, he became my first hero. Technically, my first hero really was Spider-Man, but I remember making the vivid transition because Spider-Man went from skyscraper to skyscraper, saving the good guys from the bad guys, but George Washington crossed the Delaware. So now, after America won the war, they still needed to figure out a way how to get all 13 states to act in unison. The Articles of Confederation was the law of the land, but it had the states fighting with one another. There were border disputes, there were currency disputes, some didn't even want to pay for the war. And both Hamilton and James Madison agreed that they needed to find a way how to unite the states of America. And they organized the Constitutional Convention, with George Washington serving as the president of the convention. They would determine to figure out the proper way that they would form this government. So the two documents, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, are the essentials of the founding of the nation, and I believe they're, frankly, the two greatest political documents ever written. Now, as far as the Declaration of Independence goes, that was kind of like a divorce. Basically, you're in a bad relationship and you want to get out. But that doesn't say that you're automatically going to meet the right partner after that. And the same thing happened. We had Federalists and Anti-Federalists. We had ratifiers of the Constitution, anti-ratifiers, and it was kind of like today's Tea Party, where they all know what they're against, but it's hard to find common ground in what they are for. But it's more important to know what you do stand for. Is liberty across the board the guarantee that you want, or is there some kind of hodgepodge of cherry-picked contradictory issues that you advocate? So even though there were lots of disagreements over what should be included or excluded, the Constitution was signed September 1787. Now, was this document fully consistent? Unfortunately not. There were some contradictions, none greater than the issue of slavery. It took an entire civil war to work that out. However, no matter how inconsistent this Constitution was, there never had been before nor since anything more consistent with the defense of individual rights. Now, unfortunately, over the past century, the political climate and terminology has changed. So now, if you ask people, what kind of government does America have? They'll likely say democracy. Popular will, the right to vote, and majority rule are more important than individual rights. I did a search on brainyquote.com to find out what famous people think of democracy. Barack Obama says, no democracy works without compromise. George W. Bush says you can't put democracy and freedom back in the box. JFK said the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of all. Woodrow Wilson dragged an unwilling America into World War I in order to make the world safe for democracy. So here we have descriptions which equate democracy with freedom, with safety, and compromise. But where are individual rights? Democracy, which means the rule of the people, also comes from the Greek term. It's actually more aligned with European history. So what did they think about it? Well, Oscar Wilde says democracy simply means the bludgeoning of the people, by the people, for the people. Karl Marx said democracy is the road to socialism. And he was proved right several decades later when his fellow Germans democratically elected Hitler. Remember, Nazi means National Socialism, where humans are reduced to acting like animals. Now, the Founding Fathers were against democracy. Benjamin Franklin called it 2 wolves and a lamb deciding what's for lunch. But liberty, he said, is a well-armed lamb. Alexander Hamilton thought democracy, which was unlimited majority rule would lead to mob rule. He said we are a Republican government. Real liberty is never found in despotism or the extremes of democracy. They remember that in ancient Greece, the majority voted to put Socrates to death. They wanted no part of it. Now, sadly, this past century shift from the government's role has gone from protecting individual rights to violating those rights in order to give to some at the expense of others. In fact, the term rights has been perverted. So now we have the right to health care, the right to an education, the right to housing. But housing, education, and health care don't grow in nature. They have to be provided by someone. Free health care for some means slave labor for those who are forced to pay for it. And we've reached the point where the current entitlement mentality appeals to politicians, so the one who promises to give away the most goodies usually wins. Now, if we look at history, we can see that freedom of speech, we still have enough of it to value our life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Celebrating the Constitution today is one way to do that, because we can educate others about the fundamental principles which are open to us. Now, we could also see that majority rule historically tends to lead to mob rule, where people do end up acting like animals who can only destroy. Just turn on the news for any leftist demonstration and you will see humans being reduced to an animal level. But on the other hand, when the government protects rights, the mind is free to create an unprecedented abundance of wealth, as America has demonstrated. And this makes our lives more comfortable and happy. Now, to contrast this highlight, I'll conclude with a quote from Ayn Rand. If a drought strikes them, animals perish. Man builds irrigation canals. If a flood strikes them, animals perish. Man builds dams. If a carnivorous pack attacks them, animals perish. Man writes the Constitution of the United States. Thank you.